I think we've talked about this in the past that, when you have finished a job, finished a matter, closed it up, it does seem like it's a breath of fresh air. It's a breath of fresh air for the client, hopefully, but then also for your practice. And it gives you more time and opportunity. It might be that you've got another one that you got to close. It might be that you're in the middle of the work of another matter. Maybe you got to go out there and rainmake and find another, referral partner, another networking lunch that you got to go to, that kind of thing. All of that will help you to see those opportunities if you close out cases in an efficient manner and just don't let them drag and drag and drag.
Yeah. And I want to circle back to something you said earlier, which is really important from the case administration side internally, and that is getting your client letters out to say, we're done with the case. The final invoicing gets sent out. The withdrawals with the court, if that's necessary. But also internally, making sure that you're closing those matters out. We talked about Clio a lot here on the podcast, and it has a feature where you can enter a closed date. And you want to decide, is the closed date the date I choose to close the case and there's still work to do? Or is the close date when I get the closing letter sent? Or is it when I get the order from the court? And you want to define what that is. But make sure that those cases get closed and are documented appropriately so that you know it's out of your mind and there's not more to do. There's a lot of times I've seen attorneys that say, I'm done with the case, so therefore I'm going to close it. Well, did you close the paper file? What did you do with all the emails? Are they all saved somewhere? Do we know when we can destroy the file from a document retention program? Do we know if we need to keep everything in the file or do we need to return some of it to the client? And so you need to think through that as part of that process as well. And I think a lot of that may give rise to the resistance of closing out a file, because in certain times you're thinking, well, that's not billable work because this is just kind of the closeout administration of that. Remember, you agreed to this at the beginning, and that's the completion includes each of those steps beyond just the legal work, but making sure that as you work in your business and on your business, that part is handled. And so you don't have that residual information there hanging around when it probably shouldn't have if the matter's been closed an appropriate amount of time, and you can move that on from a retention policy.
Yeah, and I use the phrase breath of fresh air whenever you close the file. I think whenever you move it from open to closed in Clio, whatever law practice management program that you have, or you move it to another stage in the pipeline in Clio or whatever it might be, that movement, I think it generates some endorphins. I don't have the science on it, but it feels good to see that progress. And the more that you do that, the better you're going to feel about the movement of your practice and where it's going. I think having those procedures and making them meaningful is really important. Like when I have meetings with my team, we're looking at what cases can we close out. And if we can close out 4 or 5 in a meeting and say, yeah, we have sent that disengagement letter. I've got a process in place where I meet with my estate planning paralegal and we talk about the cases. But then if there are disengagement letters that need to be signed, I'll sign them right there in the meeting, and then we'll close out the matter in Clio, and then we're done. And it feels really good to be able to, close out cases like that and know that we're clearing out space for the next round for next week to close out some more.
Yeah, I think especially with knowledge work, it's hard to quantify what we do because almost everything nowadays is digital. Now, in the estate planning world, we actually get to print out binders that have paper that people sign, and you actually see the result of the work when that is done, or you may physically have that on a shelf and it's moving through a progression. But when you mow your yard, it's pretty easy to see the progress that's being made and what's left to do, right? Or I guess more appropriate for this time of year, shoveling your driveway. But you could at least see that I did this much and I have this much to do. And there's various ways to do that from a digital perspective. But as you mentioned, those pipelines and those matter stages, that's also helpful because you see it one step closer to the end of that pipeline. And you know, once you get it there visually, okay, that means we've done a lot of work to get it there. And you start to feel, okay, I can handle what's left because that's a smaller list now than it was before. And we're making progress, and that's a good thing. And it's going to be different for every person in terms of how you sort of visualize the work that you have to do from a knowledge perspective. But anything you can do to help quantify that for yourself and make it feel like you're moving forward and not just going in circles, that's a good thing.